Welcome to Lean IT Foundations. Today we will be reviewing Section 3, Dimensions of Lean IT Organization. Section 3C, Lean IT Organization. I am your speaker, Anthony McCollum. I am a Process Improvement Specialist. So far, we've been covering the 5 dimensions of the Lean IT organization. We started off with covering customers. We moved on to process. Today, we will be covering organization. We will move on to performance and finish up with behavior and attitude in the following sections. Organization. There are 3 key interconnected components of any organization: the organizational structure, the performance dialogue, and the visual management, which helps these organizations communicate. Let's start off with a little bit of the organizational structure. The first thing that the organization must do is ensure strong customer orientation. Again, everything that we do in Lean IT is all about increasing and building value for the customer. So when we are working on the Lean IT organization, we do want to ensure that all of our actions are geared towards ensuring that our customers are satisfied. The key way of doing that is empowering the frontline employees to be able to listen to and respond to the voice of the customer. When we're developing the organizational structure and communication within the organization, it's important to enable rapid and effective communication amongst all lines within the organization. The traditional method for communication within organizational structures was to communicate from the top down, meaning the board hosted most of the decisions, and that was then in turn communicated to senior management, all the way down through middle management to the frontline employees. In a lean organization, though, we turn this pyramid upside down. It is the frontline employees that should be gathering up most of the information to communicate that to the board. This allows us a much wider broad for communication intake from the voice of the customer. So in any lean project, again, our goal is to reduce waste and add value to the customers. How do we generally do this? When we seek out to reduce waste, most of the time we're doing it through project-based initiatives. So one of the first things we must do is select a project. And any good project needs a good team to follow that up. Let's discuss these 2 aspects in more detail. So first things first, how do we actually select a project that we want to take on for a lean project or a Six Sigma project? One of the most important things is understanding the concept of the project and how it will relate with the end vision of not only the project, but higher levels within the organization and organizational vision and direction. It's important that this project focuses on doing things in the right way, not just getting things done for the sake of busy work within the company. A lot of this has to do with tactical management versus strategic management. We want to make sure that everything we are doing falls in line with the overall strategies within the organization. Now let's talk about the team. Once we do eventually bring our team together, it's important to have some key factors, like clear objectives within the team. Everyone needs to know what their role is within the team and the direction that the team is going. Stakeholders need to be identified, not just the team members, but also who else is affected within this project. You should look at your customers as well as higher level executives within the organization that would support your project. That's why it's important to keep in mind those impacted personnel. Not just the folks within your organization, but once you complete your project, who else, upstream or down, will be affected by the outcome. Timelines are critical. when it comes to achieving a project. In Lean, we do seek to find quick wins at first if we can, and tie those quick wins in with bigger level goals that we want to achieve. Once you do have your team together, there will be some essential aspects that the team must go through. Someone will have to schedule the meetings, create agendas. One of the important things to keep in mind if you're leading a Lean project is that everyone has a voice within the team. And within that team, it's important that everyone has a chance to speak and be heard. After the meeting, we should always try to summarize our meeting, jot down the minutes of the meeting so that everyone knows what happened. It's important that when we walk away from meetings that everyone has action items that they can be held accountable for. And outside of the meetings, it's also important that everyone within that team has a united front, even if they do not agree in the direction of the project. So we mentioned stakeholders. Let's talk about stakeholders in a little bit more detail. There are many types of stakeholders when you're taking on a Lean project. The CEO of the entire company is a stakeholder. It does not matter where within the organization your project is, how big or small it is, all executives within the company are stakeholders. Customers are a big stakeholder, right? If your project is not directly improving the customer value, our customers as a stakeholder would not be happy with that. We can have technicians or the people doing the actual work that will be directly affected by your particular project. Let's take a look at a stakeholder example when we're thinking about a bride and a groom. Whenever you're starting a project, it's always good to think about who the stakeholders are, all the people that will be affected by this project in some way, directly or indirectly, and map them on what's called a stakeholder map. The basic stakeholder map is divided into four quadrants. On the y-axis, we have the interest of a particular stakeholder. That's simply put, how much does that person care about the project you're doing? And on the x-axis, we have the influence of that stakeholder. How much power does this stakeholder have over the influence of the project, right? The direction. If someone can immediately stop the project, they have a lot of influence or power over that project. Now, the four quadrants we have, the highest and most important, we have to manage most thoroughly those stakeholders that fall in the high influence and high interest, right? These are the folks that we will want to update on a daily basis and make sure that the project is going in the direction that they are happy with. Stakeholders that have a lot of interest, but not necessarily a lot of influence, we also want to keep informed, maybe perhaps more on a weekly basis. Those with low interest and low influence do not need to be kept in the loop quite as often as some other stakeholders, perhaps a weekly or bi-monthly notice of how things are going, or maybe you just see them in the hallway and you give them a quick update. Those who have high influence and low interest, now these are very important people, again, because they have the ability to directly affect the way that the project is going and the outcome, but they just don't necessarily want to be told every single day about the progress of the project. Let's play a little stakeholder mapping game. For a wedding, we have a bride, we have a groom, we have guests, and we have the caterer, or the cake caterer. See if you can guess which quadrant the bride goes in. The bride definitely has a lot of interest and a lot of interest in the wedding. This person, we will need to keep abreast of every change that is going on within the wedding. The groom probably has quite a bit of interest, maybe not as much influence as the bride. Again, important to keep this person in the know of what's going on within the project, but leave the big decisions to the bride. Where would our guests go? Guests are going to have interest, not nearly as much interest as the bride and groom. Of course, there are varying levels of the types of guests, from the best man or the maid of honor to other folks that are just attending the wedding. Again, interest, but not a lot of influence on the ins and outs of the ways of the wedding. Now, the caterer can influence the wedding in a big way, right? If any of the food or the cake, the venue, the photography is off, it would have an impact or a big influence on the wedding. However, the caterers themselves may not have a high level of interest in the wedding itself. So some things to keep in mind once we do map our stakeholders and we know who they are. There are 4 dimensions that we want to try our best to satisfy our stakeholders. These 4 dimensions are quality, cost, schedule, and risk. Unfortunately, in general, we are only able to meet our stakeholders' demands on 3 of the 4 essential stakeholder requirements. If we want a high quality, that generally comes with a bit of cost and some level of risk, since we are looking for quality. If we were to move quality over for schedule, for example, we may be able to speed up the pace at which a project is going, but we may not have the quality under much control. The goal, whenever you're trying to satisfy a stakeholder, is to understand which of these dimensions your stakeholders view as the most important. So let's talk about once we get that project underway. We have the team perspective, rollout, support, follow-up, and nemawashi. Nemawashi is, again, a Japanese term here for all of the work that goes into preparation. Once your project is complete and you finally hit the go button, that's actually generally the easiest part. All of the work leading up to go live dates, that's the hard part. That's the nemawashi within a particular project. Let's look at a little example of a project that I did myself. This is a tomato in my garden. The end goal of my project was to pluck a tomato from my vine. This is how my garden started. There was a lot of work that needed to be done for me to get to my end goal. I had to clean up the soil, build the beds for the garden, put in fertilizer, move some bricks around for a level walking area. And all while I had to keep in mind some of the key stakeholders within the garden, like my wife and my dog, who is a very impacted personnel within the environment that I was performing my project. Now again, a key stakeholder, maybe not a lot of influence, but my dog does care about what I am doing in her backyard. Over time, the project does go, and I'm able to hit the go live date on my project and eventually get my tomato off the vine. So let's look at some tools for the team. How do we get there? Well, some tools that we can use when we're managing our team is visual management. We did review the Kanban boards in other sections, which was a great way to communicate with your team on the project or process flow that we are working on. Visual management is just a good way to connect management to the day-to-day operation with what the team is doing. But the great thing about visual management is there are varying levels of visual management and communication from the frontline employees all the way up to the executive board if we're able to figure out a way to do that correctly. One of the key ways to communicate is what's called the daily stand-up. The daily stand-up is a 15-minute meeting that happens every single day at the exact same time. And in this meeting, there are 3 key questions that are asked. What did you work on yesterday? What are you working on today? And are there any roadblocks that may prevent you from getting your tasks done as it relates to this particular project? Now, the cadence for these daily stand-ups, these 15-minute meetings, and again, they can never be more than 15 minutes, is to just keep the pulse of the project going and to make sure that everyone is being held accountable for what they are supposed to do and that the project is running in the right way. If you work remotely, these daily stand-ups can be done remotely. Again, key things to keep in mind with these stand-ups is we want to hear from everyone that is directly involved with the project. These meetings cannot go over 15 minutes. And even if you are doing these remotely, you should stand. Again, the standing is a piece to Make sure that the meetings are kept under 15 minutes because people aren't as comfortable when they're standing up. And I can assure you, if you follow this simple method, if you ask these 3 questions, and don't dive into the details of a lot of things, but just ask these 3 questions, the meetings will be under 15 minutes and your projects will stay on pace, things will get done. So we'll see a way to tie in those daily stand-ups with the Swift Cascade communication boards. So we did mention there are different types of boards for different levels within the organization. What the frontline employees will be reviewing is going to be different than what the executives are viewing. However, all of these boards should be interrelated by their KPIs, or the key performance indicators. We will review key performance indicators in the next section. But it's important to note that the KPIs should be somewhat related. For example, if the executive team is interested in sales volume and quality within a project, within the product is directly related to sales volume, then quality might be what we would find on the frontline board. These metrics would then be translated from the daily board to the weekly board that the mid-level management review all the way up to the executive meeting boards so that everyone can see how everyone is doing within their projects. This is called a swift cascade of communication. Now there's different types of performance dialogues that we will see within all of these meetings, but there's some key things that are prevalent in all meetings at all levels. That is defined objectives, right? We want to make sure that all of our objectives are SMART. And we'll dive into the definition of what SMART objectives are in a few slides. But we should definitely discuss and agree and make sure that everyone knows exactly what they are doing, what they're working on, and the direction they're going, and how all of the tasks are related. Offer support. In all of these meetings at all levels, it's important to make sure that everyone on the team knows that support is out there, and if they do run into a particular problem, that they will be heard. Feedback. That's a key reason that we have these meetings, is so that people can express what is going on within their project, offer feedback to each other, and observations that they've experienced while they are doing these stand-ups. Here's examples of how these boards are all interrelated. So on the day board in the right here, this is where we will do our 15-minute stand-up. And again, we want to have key metrics that are relevant to the people that are doing this project every single day, the frontline employees. Issues that can be transferred from the day board to the weekly board or the improvement Kaizen board, right? So if there are big issues that we discover on the day board that we cannot manage within the scope of this project, we will move those over to the improvement board or the Kaizen board. Daily metrics that management would care about would then be transferred to the weekly board, where they would then update their metrics. Feedback that mid-level management would get on the weekly board can be directly translated to the daily board, and decisions can be made about the types of key performance indicators that go on these boards. Note that the improvement board and the weekly board are generally reviewed weekly, not daily. Here's just a little bit more detail about what goes on the day board, the weekly board, or the improvement Kaizen board. This is an example of a day board. I do want to point out that there is no one way to make a day board. Your day board should be customized to your project, your team, your work environment, and again, the type of work that you are doing. Again, here's just an example of a weekly board where we focus on customers, employees, costs, again, things that management may be interested in seeing on a weekly basis. An improvement board is a bit longer planned out. Again, these are issues that have come up on the daily boards and the weekly boards that we were not able to directly address during a particular project. These may be future projects that we would take on or future next phases for projects that we are currently working on, but do not fall within the direct scope of the project we are working on. Another way of looking at these different types of boards, right, is to go back to the PDCA cycle that we covered, where we're going to do a lot of planning on those daily boards, and we're going to check those in the weekly boards, and we can act on all types of improvement projects that are eventually making it to the Kaizen board. We'll do a quick knowledge check for organization. What board contains all necessary KPIs needed to steer the organization? Day board, week board, month board, improvement board. Here we're going to take a look at the B board, as that should have a bit more higher level KPIs that management would be more involved in and not necessarily impact the customers as directly as some of the day boards. In a lean transformation, how can IT serve as a major catalyst for change? Everyone needs a computer. Information enables all value stream. Access to the internet is vital. IT touches everyone. And the answer here is B. Information enables all value streams. So again, data will help guide your projects, all projects within the company. Which is input of the improvement board and output of the day board? Performance and progress, team KPIs, objectives for the week, or problems? And the answer here is problems. So the improvement board is all about solving problems. And that's kind of the trick here to this question. Which topics should not be covered by the manager during a performance dialogue with an employee? Discussing new and ongoing objectives for the employee, offering support to the employee for the achievement of their objective, discussing solutions with the employee to enable them to meet their objectives, giving feedback on how the employee performed or behaved. The answer here is C. Again, when meeting with employees, we want to focus on problems. The employees are capable, more than capable, of solving issues. So it's important for management to help train and develop our future leaders by helping them to make and see decisions on their own. This completes Section 3C.